أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So I'm very excited, alhamdulillah, to be able to share some thoughts and reflections about Hajj and Dhul Hijjah, and also to talk a little bit about the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And it's an honor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He has given us another opportunity to talk about these virtuous days and the opportunity to be able to witness them, inshallah. So a couple of things before I start. One is that, out of the millions of people that Allah has, sent on this earth, alhamdulillah, Allah has chosen, a group of His creation to be able to witness the best of the days of this year. The second thing is that, I consider this sort of like, how the best sales are like the Christmas sales, which come at the end of the year. A lot of people, they wait for those sales the whole year, because none of the sales are as good as that, because people are trying to, perhaps, get rid of all the last stock or whatever it is. But those are generally the best sales, the best offers, the best deals that you get. And so as we come to the end of the year, the Islamic year, this is sort of, you could say, like the last deal or the last offer that we have before this year ends for our ibadah. And of course, it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it the best days and the best offer that He's made for us. The third thing that I want to mention before I start is that, a lot of the things that I will say are probably things you either already know or have heard me say before or have heard somewhere else. But when you go outside, you see these billboards, and you see familiar things on the billboards, right? So, for example, the iPhone. This is something that, a lot of us have, or even an Android, Samsung, for example. A lot of people have phones, and a phone is something that, we'll forget our children, but we won't forget our phone. It's like, it's always with us. And still these companies, like mobile companies or, restaurants, dessert joints, coffee shops, they still find the need to advertise and to put these pictures on billboards, on bridges, and a lot of the times you'll see, like, especially with, for example, phones, it's just the phone. It's just the picture of a phone. And they don't even need to put any writing, right? It's almost like, the whole ideology behind advertising is to remind. It's just to, keep things in your face and to keep reminding you that these things are there, and, to of course, encourage sales. But the main purpose is to remind. And so even with familiar things, I mean, sometimes I see some adverts and I think that this product is so popular, they don't even need to remind anyone. I don't think this is going to go out of anyone's mind. For example, an iPhone, right? I don't think anyone's going to forget that, I'd forgotten that there's an iPhone, maybe I should go and look at the phone if I need to buy one. But still, these companies recognize the power of reminding and, keeping things alive, keeping things consistently present in people's presence, so that so that they remember and they keep remembering and don't forget, So I'm just saying that, sometimes we might repeat things and we might hear things again, but the nature of the human being is such that he forgets. And these companies, they recognize that. They know that, that the human being forgets things. And so they use that technique and they keep reminding. And so, we might think that, oh, I've read the Quran with the meanings, I've studied the tafsir, why would I have to keep reading it again and again? But it's in reading it again, there is a reminder for the believer, because as human beings, we forget. And number two, sometimes you read the same thing or hear the same thing, and you say, oh, I heard this a long time ago and I've forgotten. Or you might say that, oh, I've read this so many times, but I never paid attention to this point. And I've noticed that sometimes when I'm preparing, a reminder or a dars, and I look at some older notes that I had made, and I will read the same thing that I would have used myself to deliver in a talk. And now I'm reading it with a different lens, because we change, right? We evolve, we grow. And so we might look at the same thing, but now we're just looking at it with a different depth. And I look at it and I will just think, wow, I never thought about this aspect of the same thing that I've said before or written before. And so, I just want to say that even if you hear things which you have heard before, just think about them and, reflect on them again, because as I said, that there's a lot of benefit in the reminder for the believer. And, sorry, I'm just a bit distracted with trying to add people on. But yes, I think I'm just trying to say that even in the repetition, inshallah, there's a lot of benefit. All right, so Hajj is a very emotional topic for me, because it marks the end of the Islamic year. So there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to, do your own muhasaba and ask yourself how you spent this year and what are the things that you could have done differently so that you can try and implement those changes in the coming year. And it doesn't only mark the end of the year, but it's like a metaphorical marking the end of your life, like, coming towards the end of your life. Because it's just interesting, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, organized even the special, the special days or the special, months that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with and given us the opportunity to earn more reward in, and how He has, organized them. So He has placed one of the greatest ibadas and the best days in the whole year. And I will try and explain a bit better with, some analogy and explanation of, when I say best days, what am I talking about, best days? Because a lot of the times we just hear, oh, best days. And, it's just like, you don't really think properly about, what does it mean when we say best days. But the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed this right at the end, and the whole, you could say, the meaning of the Hajj, or, the spirit of what Hajj actually is. It's almost like a meeting with Allah or a journey to Allah. And so this final journey to Allah, this final rite that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed at the end of the year, it's as if, as I said that, it's like this was your year and it's almost like coming towards the end of your life. And so the whole year you have been trying to, do different things to try and improve yourself, to strengthen your soul, to come closer to Allah. We just had Ramadan, which was a, spiritually uplifting time for us all. And it, hopefully it brought us closer to Allah. And then it's like, it's almost like, all our life we're trying and we're making an effort. And then as we're coming towards the end of our life, the main thing that we are now going to do is our journey coming to Allah is coming to an end. And so it's almost like symbolic that, the whole year we've made these efforts, and now it's the crux of what all of that was almost like a preparation for this big, you could say, main event, which is meeting Allah. So we will live our whole life in the world, and then, everything is geared towards that one main event, which will be the day we meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, that is what we're working towards, and that's the main thing that we are really trying to achieve. And so, in a nutshell, I would say that it's almost as if, Hajj just reminds you that you are moving towards your final meeting with Allah. And the only thing that we need and that will be of use to us and that we will take with us, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, after A'udhu Billahi Minash Shaitanir Rajeem, Al-Hajju Ashhurum Ma'lumat, فمن فرض فيهن الحج فلا فسوق ولا جدال فلا رفث ولا فسوق ولا جدال في الحج وما تفعل من خير يعلمه الله وتزودوا فإن خير الزاد التقوى. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us that the main thing that we need to prepare for, because, usually when people are going for Hajj, you'll see on groups and messages, people are asking, how much money should I take? How many ihrams should I take? Where can I find fragrance-free soaps? What kind of shoes are the best to take? Should I take a mushaf? Should I use the mushaf on my phone? People are asking a lot of these sort of like practical, logistical questions. What kind of clothes are best? Should I take trousers? Should I take dresses, long dresses? What color abaya? What kind of hijab, pins, this, that? It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, when He's talking about Hajj, He's telling us, وَتَزَوَّدُوا فَإِنَّ خَيْرَ الزَّادِ التَّقْوَى, that prepare for the Hajj, and the best preparation for Hajj is your taqwa. So sometimes we've got our bags prepared, we've got our checklists done, but we haven't prepared our heart. We have not prepared our souls. We have not done the real preparation that we needed to do to complete this journey and really to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is again symbolic of our life, and whatever we are earning and doing throughout our life, the main thing that we need to be earning and preparing for is taqwa. And so this is the final deed of the year, you could say, as the year draws to a close. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an opportunity, almost like a boost, right at the end, that if you missed out throughout the year even, and let's say even your Ramadan was, it was like all over the place, or you were not able to do as much as you wanted to, then here's your chance. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been really generous during these days, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it so easy. He has kept it really, really easy. And I will again, explain that as we talk about it in a little bit more detail about the days of Dhul Hijjah. So what I've done is I've divided what I wanted to share with you into sort of like 4 sections. And so the first section, I just wanted to just give a general overview of what Hajj is for me, and what does the month of Dhul Hijjah symbolize to me, and just sort of, to put a little bit more soul into, this month before we enter it. Because, sometimes I think we're not able to get the most out of something because we don't really understand what it is or what does it mean. And, you can't be blamed for that, because if you don't know, for example, what is the significance of water, or how it benefits your body, or how it benefits your health, then you can't be blamed if you didn't drink enough, or you drank the wrong kind of water, or you drank it in the wrong way. So, you need to be educated and understand to be able to make the most of it. And so, therefore, I just wanted to first just explain, just like in a very basic and in as simple a way as possible, that, it's just symbolic of sort of coming towards the end of your existence. And now you're getting ready to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's just like the completion of your journey, or, at least a part of your journey. And another thing that it symbolizes, because it's sort of at the end of the year, and the thing that stands out in the Hajj, I remember when I was a little girl, and, we used to it was like a family tradition, on the day of Hajj, we would turn on the television and put on the channel that was broadcasting the live Hajj. And what they would do a lot of the times is, in between they would have people speaking and, mentioning different aspects of the efforts made during Hajj. And I'm talking about like years and years ago. And they would, there would be some like small brief interviews here and there in between. But generally, throughout the day on the screen, what would be playing would just be, you could see an aerial view of all the Hujjaj, in their masses, walking towards Arafah. And the sheer numbers, and it just blows your mind to think of how many people, have come to respond to to this call for Hajj. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? He said that call the people and they will come on every means that is available to them. And then in the back, there would just be this constant playing of Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik, Innal hamda wa ni'mata laka wal mulk, la sharika lak. So the thing that is being repeated, and I always used to wonder, and of course, like you memorize it because you hear it so much, and I always used to wonder, that, why is this said so many times? It's just constantly being said. And if we try and reflect on the words and we try and understand it, it is really a, you could say like a confirmation of your acknowledgement, acceptance, and understanding of the Tawheed of Allah, right? Of the oneness of Allah, of your, and you're not just saying that I accept that there is no one except Allah who deserves to be worshipped, but you are also denying shirk in this statement, right? Because you're saying Labbaik Allahumma Labbaik, Labbaik la sharika laka Labbaik. You're repeatedly, again and again, just repeating that there is no one except you, O Allah. And, so it's like it's like a contract renewal time, right? So you are renewing your belief in the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with Allah. And when you renew this belief, it's like a package deal, right? So when you say that there is no one who deserves to be worshipped except Allah, you are also, without saying it, you are also saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you are submitting to Him. You are submitting to all His commands. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has obliged on us, we are willing to accept it, and we are surrendering ourselves to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His will. So it's symbolic of our journey to Allah coming to an end, where now we are going to meet Allah. And I will talk to you a little bit about what I mean by meeting Allah, because obviously in the dunya, even the people who are going for Hajj, how are they going to meet Allah? So I'll tell you a little bit about that. The second thing is the contract renewal between us and Allah, that Allah, I do not worship anyone except you, and my loyalty is to you alone, and I will try my best to obey your commands, right? So that is the second thing that we're doing. The third thing is that, Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu, he was at Hajj, and there was somebody with him, and they saw the masses, as I said to you, right? On the TV screen, you see people in their masses that just walking, and it's like a never-ending, views of people everywhere. And so the man who was with Ibn Umar, he said that, look at how many people have come for Hajj. And Ibn Umar, he said, but only a few actually perform Hajj. So what he's saying here is that, yes, there is a large number of people who have, who are present, but the people who will actually perform Hajj in its real sense are only a few. And so, as I've said to you so many times that, for example, when we're praying Salah, and let's say we're praying in Jama'ah, so there might be 200 people praying in a room behind the Imam, right? And we're all doing Salah, we're all covered from head to toe, we're all doing the motions exactly the same way, we all made wudu the same way, we're all standing in the same place, and we're probably reciting the same, ad'iyah that we're supposed to recite in our Salah. But every person's Salah is different. Every person's Salah has a certain value. You could say it has a price tag, right? But every person's Salah price tag is different. And so only Allah knows whose Salah is accepted, whose Salah was deficient, whose Salah was not accepted. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that. We all try, we all make an effort, but the acceptance and the sincerity and the actual soul of that action, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Even we don't know. And so similarly, for Hajj, you might have people in their millions, but Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, but only a few actually perform Hajj. And so, a lot of people are there in body, but they are absent in their heart. They might not understand what they are doing, why they are doing it. And so a lot of their actions are soulless. And so this is an idea that I have, that maybe inshallah next year before Hajj, I'd like to run like a small Hajj workshop and just talk about the different rites and what are the wisdoms and the lessons or the soul behind some of those actions, so that, for those people who are going on Hajj, at least they can think about what they're doing and get more out of it than just, ritually just doing actions. But that's something for the for another day, inshallah. So these were some of the main things on the overview that I wanted to talk about Hajj. Talking about what I was saying about meeting Allah, and how do we meet Allah for people who are coming for Hajj, or even when we go for Umrah. So as you know, Musa alayhi salam, he wanted to meet Allah. He wanted to see Allah because he had spoken to Allah, but now he wanted to see Allah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give us all an opportunity one day to actually see him, inshallah. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala informs him that you cannot see me, but Allah told him to look at the mountain. And he said, if you look at the mountain, you might be able to see me. And so Ibrahim, not now, we'll try and take it at the end, okay? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he showed a very, very, some of the narrations say a very small portion of himself, the entire mountain crumbled, and some narrations say Musa alayhi salam died, and then, he was brought back up. So what we saw from this is that we really want to see Allah, we really want to meet Allah, but in this life, we are not going to be able to do that. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created the Kaaba to console our hearts and to give us an opportunity to feel like we have come to meet Him, like we have come to visit Him. And because this is known as the house of Allah. On a smaller scale, when we, if you think about it, this is what we do, right? If you really are feeling down and you're feeling really lost or something like that, sometimes, you say, oh, you know what, I just want to go and sit in the masjid for a little while. The masajid are the buyutullah, right? They are the houses of Allah. And so on a smaller scale, when you go to the masjid, you feel a little closer to Allah. You feel a little bit of consolation that, I'm in this place. It's almost as if you feel like you're a little closer to Allah than you were when you're not in the masjid. And so when you go to Makkah and when you go to the Kaaba, it's almost symbolic of meeting Allah, or of it's almost as if being as close to Allah as you can be, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this house as a consolation for our hearts and as something for us to feel that we have come that much closer to being with Allah, or to, being in His presence, so to speak. And if you think about the excitement that you feel when you reach Makkah, it's like, you're just waiting and you can't wait to see the Kaaba. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the Kaaba mathabatul linnas, right? And mathaba means something that you become attached to, something that you want to keep coming back to. And when you see the Kaaba, it's like, you just feel like, it's like the coolness of your eyes. And when you think about the architecture, right? Architecturally, there is nothing, in the sense that it's a cubical block, right? I mean, if you've traveled, right, and you've gone to Prague or, some of these places where there's, they've like restored some really old, beautiful buildings with all the carvings, and there is nothing in the Kaaba like that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it mathabatul linnas. And so it has this magnetism about it. So it pulls you and you don't want to go away from it. And when you go away from it, you keep wanting to go back to it. And even while you're there, it's like you want to keep looking at it. So many times you just want to sit and just look at it. And so this is all from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah made this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Kaaba these characteristics and these qualities. The other thing that I was going to say is that when you see the Kaaba, Umar radiallahu anhu, when he would see the Kaaba, and of course, they would travel from really far to come to Makkah, he would say, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam, fahayyina rabbana bis salam, tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram, which means that, oh Allah, you are as-salam, and from you is salam. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, if you were to translate it, Allah, He is saying that, oh Allah, you are peace, and from you is peace. So every tranquility and peace that comes to us is from you. So greet us with peace. فَحَيِّنَا بِالسَّلَامِ. And it's symbolic of how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in the Quran that He will greet the people of Jannah, right? They will be greeted with salam, right? At the gates, they will be greeted with salam. And so it's almost as if you feel like you've arrived and you've come to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah will greet you with salam. And if you think about it, no matter how often you go to Mecca, no matter how often you see the Kaaba, every time you see the Kaaba, you feel this extreme sense of peace. And at that time, it's almost as if you forget everything that was troubling you, you forget everything that was bringing you down, and you almost feel like, like now you've met Allah and now everything is going to get sorted out. And you feel this huge sense of peace and tranquility, and you feel this sukoon deep inside that, it can't come from anywhere else. And at least at that moment, when you set your eyes on the Kaaba, it's like nothing else matters and nothing else is on your mind. Even the things that have been keeping you awake, they've been troubling you, you've been struggling with them. But, once you see that, it's exactly as Umar radiallahu anhu is saying, Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. So all this peace is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, we can't feel that delight and that lightness in our heart that you feel when you see the Kaaba. So it's, again, as I said, it's almost just symbolic of, like a meeting with Allah. And so the Hajj is, you see in how many different ways, it just again and again is symbolic of, of your meeting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the other thing, yes, that I was going to mention, and when I was talking about architecture of the Kaaba, I'm sorry, but as I had mentioned that the Hajj is it's a very emotional topic for me. So, but, inshallah, we get through to the end of this and I'm able to tell you all the things that I want to tell you and share with you so that you can, feel more during the days of Dhul Hijjah, even if you're not able to go there, but from wherever you are, inshallah, you remember these things. And whenever you go next to the Haram, then inshallah, you can remember some of these things and, they will help you maybe. So another symbolic thing about Makkah is the place where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to make his house. So Allah created the earth and he created many beautiful destinations, right? He created places with mountains and meadows and waterfalls and beautiful rivers and streams and lakes, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose to make his house in a barren valley, which is just full of dust and sand, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he placed his house in a place that nobody would want to go to unless, we needed to go to this place, right? Like, it's not a sought after holiday destination. And of course, out of Allah's wisdom, he chose this place where the climate is difficult, the terrain is difficult. It's rough, right? Like normally when you travel and go somewhere, you arrive at the airport, you get hotel transfer, and you arrive and you get cold water and nice hot towels and a fruit basket and etc., etc. But when it comes to Makkah and when it comes to reaching the Kaaba, it is hard, it is tough, it's dusty, it's hot, you're sweating, you've got bags, there's chaos, nobody really cares who you are, where you've come from. And, it's just, it's all reflective of the struggle and the challenges of our journey towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, just like the journey to Makkah is tough and it is rough even when you arrive, and as I said, it's just like it's dusty and it's like hot, there's chaos, there's crowds and there's pushing, and especially during Hajj, really you feel like a nobody, right? You're getting shoved around, you're getting pushed here and pushed there and sitting for hours, stuck here. It's just like, but all of this, you should just have a smile on your face and know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has, decreed for this thing to be this way, and for this place to be like this, and this journey to be like this for a reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us something through this. And as I said, and this is again symbolic of our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the fact that the Kaaba is in a place where there is nothing attractive, right? There is no reason for anybody to have come there. It helps us to understand that the only reason we would come here is only for the pleasure of Allah, only to fulfill our rights of either Hajj or Umrah. And comparatively, Medina is different. The terrain is different. Makkah, as you know, is like hills and ups and downs, and even some of the hotels, they are in such awkward places, an up climb, down climb. And so, this is again all, it's just to teach us and give us sort of an understanding and a sample of our journey to Allah and how it is difficult. And our journey to Allah is tough. It requires patience. It requires sacrifice. Ibadah is tough. Ibadah requires patience. It requires patience for us to wake up when we are in deep sleep and go and wash under the water, when at that time you don't want any water to touch you. You'd rather just be wrapped up in your quilt, and you come out of this and you wash yourself and you stand in front of Allah. All of this, it requires sabr, it requires sacrifice. To be consistent in your ibadah of Allah, to consistently, whether it is recite Quran or fast or, give up the things that you like for the sake of Allah. All of these things, they require sabr and sacrifice. And this is all part of our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He sees and He acknowledges everything. It doesn't matter what people think, what people know, because our reward is not from the people, right? When you don't do something that you should be doing, for example, I've had people come to me and explain to me why they are not wearing hijab yet, and when they are planning to start wearing hijab, or why they are not praying, and when they are planning to start praying. Don't tell me, because I'm not going to judge you. You should have an answer to give to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment, because that is who you will have to explain to why you did or did not do certain things. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is a shakur. He appreciates, He acknowledges. When I first understood the meaning of some of these things, I was just amazed that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala appreciates, He acknowledges. And Allah does not have to thank us for what we are doing, because we have to do these things anyway. These are commands that we have to fulfill. And still Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kind, He's so gracious, and He appreciates. And so these were some of the overviews, just general overview about Hajj that I wanted to share with you. So yes, our journey to Allah, the visiting Allah or seeing Allah and seeing the Kaaba, the difficulty of getting to Mecca, the terrain, and how that is again symbolic of our journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how this is the renewal of a contract, a yearly contract of Tawheed and our worship and our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His commands. the next thing that I wanted to share with you was about the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. So actually, before I go on to that, the next thing I'll share with you is what are the days of Dhul Hijjah and what is special about them. So, the Prophet ﷺ, he told us that these are the best days of the year. Now, when we say best days of the year, I want you to think of a time in your life that you thought was the best day in your life. It might have been the day you graduated. It might have been the day you had a child. It might have been the day you got married. Different people, they have different experiences, and they say, I will never forget this day, right? When you say I will never forget this day, that means that is the most important day in your life, that you will never forget that day. Like the day you gave birth to your first child, you might say, I will never forget this day, right? It's a very special moment, a very special occasion. The days of Dhul Hijjah, they are far above any of those very special days of your life. Any of those days that you have had that you think that you will never forget, the days of Dhul Hijjah are bigger and better than that. And you have to give the days of Dhul Hijjah that importance and those kind of actions in those days, that they become memorable days that you will never forget. Like you will always remember that, last year during Dhul Hijjah, I did X, Y, Z, and I will not forget that. So the days of Dhul Hijjah are the best. And when the Prophet ﷺ said that they have أَعْظَمُ أَجْرًا, that they have the greatest rewards, if you were to imagine that the scale on the Day of Judgment, the balance in which your deeds are placed, so your fasting, other than of course the fard fasting is heavier than the voluntary fasting, but your recitation of the Quran, your dua, your adhkar, your being kind to your parents, your being kind to your neighbors, removing anything harmful from the street, doing a reminder, reciting the tasbih, anything good that you do during these days, if you were to put it on a scale and you did the same action on another day, then the same action done on these days will be much heavier than the same action done on any other day. And so these actions will outweigh all your other actions done during other times. And so that's what it means when the Prophet ﷺ said, أَعْظَمُ أَجْرًا, that these actions are the heaviest in your scales, because these are the best 10 days of the year. So anything that you do during these days will outweigh the same actions done on other days. And so now you understand what it means that they are the best days, that they are better than anything else that you have experienced. These are the best days, and that they have the greatest reward of anything. And so anything that you do, it will outweigh anything that you would do on any other day. The best thing that you would do in Ramadan is reciting the Quran, right? So Ramadan is, as Allah says, Shahru Ramadan unzila fihi al-Quran, that Ramadan is the month of the Quran, right? And of course, if you read one page of the Quran during the days of Dhul Hijjah, it will outweigh by 700 times any other day that you recite that page of Quran. So reciting a page of Quran in the days of Dhul Hijjah is almost as if you recited 700 pages of the Quran, because you get up to 700 times the reward during these days. Everything is multiplied many, many fold. And so, as I said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kind that it's the end of the year. It's like, you could say, as I said, right, the end of year offers now. And these are the best offers. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has kept it so easy that the best deeds during the days of Dhul Hijjah is to say the tasbih, the tahleel, the tahmeed, and the takbir. To say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. And so from the day that Dhul Hijjah starts, the first of Dhul Hijjah, you start saying the takbirat as much as you can. And this is the best thing that you can do during these days. Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. Okay? So this is the best thing that you can do during these days. And even if you wanted to say it on its own, that is okay as well. But this is one of the ways that you can say it. And this is the best thing that you can do during these days. And this is known as the takbir al-mutlaq, which means it is the unrestricted takbirat, right? That you can just say it all the time, anytime. And I mean, Allah is so kind that He has given us an action that we can do anytime. We can do while walking, driving, sitting, washing dishes, cooking. I mean, we can, even while we're working in the house, we can just keep doing this. And so these are the takbirat al-mutlaq. Remember that the nights are just as important as the days. And so as you do actions during the day, one of the best things you can do during the night is the tahajjud prayer. And so make an effort to not leave any night that you don't pray. And also try your best to fast as many of these days as you can. If you can fast all of them, then alhamdulillah. If you can't, then at least as many days as you can. And so the purpose of the Hajj is the dhikr of Allah. I mean, the days of Hajj. And so even if you are not going for Hajj, one of the best things you can do while you're here is dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we have the takbirat al-muqayyad, which are the restricted or specific takbirat. These start on the day of Arafah. So they start from the Fajr Salah of the day of Arafah. So when you pray Fajr on the day of Arafah, which is the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, you pray your Fajr Salah and you don't get up from your Salah until you say Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd. And you keep saying this after every Salah until the last day of Tashriq. So from the 9th until the 13th. For these 5 days, you say the takbirat after every Salah, and that's the takbirat al-muqayyad. The next part, or the next section that I wanted to talk about is the day of Arafah. And the day of Arafah is extremely special and extremely important in our lives. Because this is the day when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees the most people from the hellfire. What does it mean when Allah frees you from the hellfire? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees more people on the day of Arafah than on any other day, even including Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees more people on the day of Arafah than on any other day. And so it's a very, very special day. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala frees you from the hellfire, it means that you may, after this time, for example, commit a sin. You might do something that is displeasing to Allah. You might disobey Allah. You might go astray. But if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala freed you during one of these days, during, the day of Arafah, then that means that even if you were to go astray or disobey Allah or commit a sin, that inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you an opportunity to make istighfar, to make tawbah, and to come back and to return to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you are now one of the people who is freed from the fire. So it is a very, very precious and important thing for us to try and get. And so, oh yes, and I forgot to mention to you that the takbirat, one of the huge virtues of not just the takbirat, but the dhikr of Allah, of saying La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, or saying Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Wallahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Walillahi alhamd, is that this adhkar, it brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sorry, there was some other point that, yeah. It brings you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it strengthens your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It mends your relationship with Allah. So if anything had become, broken between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if in any way you had become distanced from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these adhkar, they will bring you close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will fix that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they will strengthen your heart. They will comfort your heart. So it's really like a food for your soul and your heart, these adhkar that you will be doing. So coming back to Arafah and freeing yourself from the fire. So one of the things to do on the day of Arafah is to fast the day of Arafah. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he told us, if you fast on the day of Arafah, you have the sins of this year forgiven and the previous year forgiven. So you get forgiveness for 2 years of sins if you fast on the day of Arafah. The best dua is the dua on the day of Arafah. And this is for the Hujjaj, but it is also for the people who are not on Hajj. If it is possible for you, from Dhuhr or Asr onwards, on the day of Arafah, isolate yourself. Either go and sit in the masjid or sit in your room and tell people that, can you please not disturb me until Maghrib. Until Maghrib, don't stop making dua. And the main dua you want to make is you want to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to free you from the fire. That is how we hope to be freed from the fire, by asking Allah for it and by begging Allah for it during this time. The Prophet ﷺ's dua was so consistent on this day, during these hours, that it is said that he raised his hands after Dhuhr and he did not put his hands down until Maghrib. And that was almost, if I recall correctly, it was almost 6 hours. And the only thing they said he did, his whip slipped out of his hand, and so he bent down with one hand up in dua and one hand to pick up his whip. That is how consistent he was in making dua at that time. He did not stop making dua on the day of Arafah. In Ramadan, we search for the night of Qadr because we don't know when it is. So we pray all 10 nights because we're looking for the night of Qadr, because the night of Qadr is precious and the dua on the night of Qadr is special, right? Arafah is known. The day of Arafah is known to us. And the dua on the day of Arafah is the most special dua. So make use of this opportunity. Make use of this time and try to free yourself during this time. Don't lose it. Don't miss out on it, and make dua. And don't think, oh, I've got lots of hours. I'll see. I don't have that many duas. I'll make dua later, or I'll do it after Asr. I'll do it half an hour before Maghrib. Just spend your time as much as you can, either making dhikr of Allah, either making the takbirat. The other thing that is very virtuous to say on this day is La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulk wa lahul hamd, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So alternate between dua, between dhikr of Allah, specifically this dhikr, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulk wa lahul hamd, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, Quran, and then go back to dua. So if you just alternate between and just keep changing from one to the other, inshallah, you will have like a sort of like a program for yourself. If you can't constantly make dua, if you can make dua the whole time, make dua the whole time. But if you can't, then switch between these things. And the saying of La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah is amazing. Again, you are, as I said, Hajj is about renewing your tawheed, right? You are almost like, refreshing your commitment to La ilaha illallah. So when you say La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, you are saying that anything other than you, O Allah, I am free from that. You are freeing yourself from being associated with anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when it comes to your ibadah, right? And just as a side point, just remember that anything that comes into your heart and it becomes something that comes between you and Allah, or it is something that is a cause of you becoming distanced from Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will either cut it out of your life or He will take it away. Because this is something that is coming between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So don't let anything become so close to you or so dear to you that it is now competing with your connection with Allah or your love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you will lose it. You will end up losing it. And so when we're saying wahdahu la sharika lah, we are cutting everything out of our heart, from the lub, from the depth of our heart, where only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be there, other than Allah. And so you leave everything out and only keep Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your heart. And as we talked about zuhud last time, everything else should be in your hands. All your other relationships, all the other things that are important to you, your children, your spouse, your parents, your possessions, your jobs, your cars, your homes, all the things that you love, they should be in your hands. Only Allah should be in your heart. And only Allah is worthy of your love, your attention, your focus, and most of all your ibadah. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is worthy of that. And then we say lahul mulk. When you say lahul mulk, that everything belongs to Allah, it almost, the greater you magnify Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the smaller you realize how small you are, right? And how pathetic you are. How insignificant we are. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala owns everything. We own nothing. Whatever we have is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us from His treasures. La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah, lahul mulk wa lahul hamd. All praises for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything that we have is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All praises for Allah. Wa huwa ala kulli shayin qadir. Nothing is impossible for Allah. Nothing is difficult for Allah. Remember I said previously that when we make dua, don't restrict your dua. Ask. Do you think Hajar alayhi salam thought that a stream that is never going to end is going to sprout from this barren valley? Do you think Musa alayhi salam thought that the sea is going to split and they're all going to cross and be saved from Firaun and his army? Do you think Ibrahim alayhi salam thought when he was being thrown into the fire with a catapult, he's literally flying into the fire, and they said the fire was so hot that they could not even come close to throw him into the fire, because the heat was, they had made the fire so huge, the heat was so strong that they had to make a catapult, something that would throw him from far, because they couldn't even come close to throw him. That's how hot it was. Do you think Ibrahim alayhi salam would have known that this is going to become a place, a coolness and a place of comfort for me? So make dua, ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and don't restrict your dua. And remember, Allah is ala kulli shayin qadir, wa huwa ala kulli shayin qadir. And remind yourself that Allah is the one who can return tranquility back into your life. Whatever is troubling you, whatever has shaken you up, whatever has broken you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can put you back together. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can mend your broken heart. Allah can return that tranquility into your life. Problems come and go, but they should never be a cause to weaken our iman and our deen, and this belief that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can fix it. Always have good hope in Allah. Always have good expectations from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and trust in Allah's ability, in Allah's power, and have good hope. And remember that Allah is ala kulli shay'in qadir. Okay, so that, and due to shortage of time, I don't want to go into too much detail, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala descends on the day of Arafah, and He boasts to His angels about the people who have gathered. And so He frees the most people on this day, and Shaitan is the most humiliated on this day. So that is for about the day of Arafah. And now I will just end quickly with a few tips, practical tips. And before that, I just want to talk briefly about the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, only because I put it in the title. So I just want to mention it because Hajj is really all sort of about the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And, you know, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was by himself. A lot of the times when you read about him and you read about his life, you see he's alone. As a child, he's alone. His entire tribe, including his father, they are all against him, right? That's why they're throwing him into the fire. He's all alone. And then he's told to leave his wife in the desert. And then he is told to sacrifice Ismail alayhi salam. And so you see how almost a lot of relationships and people are taken away from him. But he has one constant in his life, and that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he gets, at the end of all this, he gets the trophy of being Khalilullah, right? Nothing came between him and Allah. Not even his love for his child, not his love for his wife, not his love for his father or his tribe. Nothing ever comes between him and his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This teaches us from one of the main lessons about Ibrahim alayhi salam and his legacy, that if you give something up for the sake of Allah, if you accept something that you don't like, whether it makes sense, it doesn't make sense to you, you understand it, you don't understand why this is happening in your life, but you accept it, and you give something up for the sake of Allah, Allah will always replace it, and He will always give you something better. Ibrahim alayhi salam, as I said, he got the trophy of being Khalilullah. So if losing that thing can bring us closer to Allah, or it can give us a special status with Allah, then that we might not realize and understand it here, but one day we will understand that that was better for us than anything else. So that is one of the main lessons from the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam, is giving things up and sacrificing without asking any questions, even things that don't make any sense. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a son after over 80 years. And then Allah tells him to sacrifice his son, and he doesn't ask any questions, right? So his life is all about submitting to Allah and with love and with, you know, he doesn't do these things with, you know, with disdain or like, you know, as if it's a burden. He does them with love because he loves Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when you do your ibadah, if you want to improve the quality of your ibadah, and if you want to increase the status of your ibadah, then do it out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not as if I have to do it, I have to take this box off. The second thing that we see in the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam and Hajar alayhi salam is that the shaitan, he comes to Ibrahim alayhi salam in 3 places, and he tries to tell him not to sacrifice his son, and he tries to tell him that, oh, this is such a dumb thing that you're about to do, right? That this child was going to be your support in your old age. And Ibrahim alayhi salam, he, you know, throws these stones and he ignores the shaitan. And so in our life, when we are trying to do the right thing, shaitan will come and he will tell us, don't do this, and how stupid you're being, and don't make this sacrifice, don't leave this, etc., etc. And so if we do the right thing and we ignore the shaitan, then inshallah the victory will be ours and the success will be ours, inshallah. The third thing is Hajar alayhi salam. We see that the strength of her tawakkul and the perfection of her tawakkul in Allah. And so when she's in a situation which looks impossible, which looks so difficult, that, she's left there with a baby with hardly anything. But as soon as she finds out that Allah commanded him to do this, she accepts it. And she accepts it with satisfaction, not just merely saying, oh, okay. But she knows inside, this is what I mean when I keep saying, have good hope. If Allah took something away from you, have good hope that Allah took it away, Allah will replace it with something. And so she doesn't just sit and do nothing, right? She runs between Safa and Marwa, and she keeps running between Safa and Marwa. And only those who have gone and done Umrah and walked between Safa and Marwa will realize the distance that it is, the difficulty of walking in that plane. And we're walking in air-conditioned tiles. She was walking on gravel, stone, sand, under the heat. But she doesn't stop. It's not like she goes from Safa to Marwa, Marwa to Safa, and she says, okay, you know what? Nothing's happening. I'm just going to stop now. And she doesn't know at that time how many rounds she's going to have to make, but she knows that Allah will make a way out. So when you are stuck in a situation, know that Allah will make a way out, but it is your test. And you are still walking between Safa and Marwa, the metaphorical Safa and Marwa in your life. And you are still going to keep moving until Allah makes that way out. And we don't know when that way is going to be. We don't know when these rounds are going to end, but we have to keep making those rounds and have good hope in Allah and have good tawakkul. Perfect your tawakkul in Allah, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He has put me in this situation, He will take me out of this situation, and He will fix this situation for me, and He will fix my heart, and He will, make things better for me. Nobody else can. So, inshallah, those are the three main lessons that I wanted to just mention from the life of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And the last thing that I wanted to give you was just some practical tips, which is inshallah very quick. So I have 12 practical tips for these 10 days. The first thing is try to excel in your fara'id. So the fara'id is the main thing that helps you to come closer to Allah. So whatever fara'id you are doing, try to improve the quality of those fara'id. Understand why you're doing them. Try to do them with love, with more motivation than just, I just need to do this and finish it, right? So enjoy those actions that you are doing. The second thing is the Hajj. If you are able to do it, then you do the Hajj. The third thing is the Udhiyah. Make sure that you make the intention to do the Udhiyah. And if you are intending to do the Udhiyah, then only the person who is doing the Udhiyah has to abstain from trimming their nails or cutting their hair until the Udhiyah is done. So if it's the head of the family who's doing it, then the wife and the children, they don't have to abstain from these things. Only the person who's actually doing the Udhiyah has to do it. Increase in your nawafil and your sunan and ratiba. So if you don't normally pray your sunnahs, try to increase in those. Try to do extra nawafil like duha, like tahajjud, the extra nawafil of before the fard salah, after adhan, for wudu. So any extra nawafil that you can do. Recite a lot of Quran. Revise what you have memorized or review what you have done during Ramadan, and try to, keep the Quran alive during these days as much as you can. Of course, the tahleel, the takbir, the tasbih, and the tahmeed. These are the best things that you can do during these days. Number 7, dua, particularly on the day of Arafah. That is the best day for your dua. And one of the most important duas that you will do is asking Allah to free you from the hellfire. وَمَنْ زُحْزِحَ عَنِ النَّارِ وَأُدْخِلَ الْجَنَّةَ فَقَدْ فَازَ. This is the greatest reward that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can give us, is to free us from the fire and enter us into paradise. And of course, we make dua for Allah's pleasure. We ask Allah to be pleased with us, because if Allah is pleased with you, then everything is sorted out for you. So that is one of our main goals, more than even paradise, is Allah's pleasure, earning Allah's pleasure. And that's why we want to submit to Him. We want to renew our contract with Him. We want to re-establish La ilaha illallah, because we want to earn Allah's pleasure. If Allah is pleased with us, our life is sorted out. Number 8, sadaqah. Give as much sadaqah as you can during these days. If you have limited funds, see how much you have. Try and divide them over 10 days so that every day you're giving a little bit. So for example, if you can only spare 200 riyals, or let's say 50 pounds, then try and divide it such that every day you're giving, for example, 7 pounds, or, whatever the maths would be. Okay. Number 9, honor your parents. If your parents are alive, take care of them, honor them, speak to them every day, give them little gifts, be kind to them, do the things that make them happy. Number 10, silatul rahim. If you have relatives and you have some ups and downs with them, try to make amends, try to be the first one to reach out. Worry about your actions rather than their actions. Lana amaluna wa lakum amalukum. So, try to fulfill that aspect as well. Number 11, istighfar. Make as much istighfar as you can, particularly in the last third of the night. That is the best time to make istighfar, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also mentioned in the Quran. So make a lot of istighfar. Number 12, the last point is, try to do some amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar, command the good and forbid the evil, in whatever capacity you can, whether it is online, whether it is in person, whether it is with your own kids, whether it is within the family, within neighbors, whatever your reach is, and in whatever capacity you can do that, try to do that. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable us to reach those days, make us amongst those who can participate in this special, in the special time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala facilitate those actions for us that are most pleasing to Him, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us and free us from the fire. وسبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our journey to Him easy, and accept our efforts, and help us to fulfill our journey in the dunya as well as in the akhirah. So if there's any questions, we will take them now, inshallah. Okay, so I'll answer that. Barakallahu feekum. Yes, Ibrahim.
I just wanted to say that some people, they pray a lot, but the thing is that sometimes people say like, oh, I pray a lot, but the only thing is that like sometimes they do it wrong, and but you have to do it right, because if you don't, then it won't count, and then there's no point because you're praying incorrectly. And also, it's very hard to like do a Umrah and Hajj, but as long as you did everything correctly and you had patience, inshallah, Allah will give you ajr, and you could go to Jannah because you feel strength.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. So yeah, one of the points that he made is good, that when you do salah, it's not just about the motions, but make sure that you are, you're aware of how to correctly do the salah, so that you're not just pecking or just, being very quick in trying to finish your salah, but you're actually trying to perfect each movement, each part of your salah, so that, your salah is accepted, and it has, a higher reward, inshallah. From you, sisters, if you have any comments that you'd like to add or make, or if you'd like to add and say anything else that I might have left out, or share any experiences, or have any questions, then I'm sorry that it has gone over the time, but yeah, there's so many things to share with. Every time I prepare the like these one-off topics like Dhul Hijjah or something like that, or Ramadan reminder, I always think, oh, there's hardly anything to say because people know most things that I'm going to say anyway. So I think, oh, this is probably just going to be a half an hour reminder, and then it ends up being 90 minutes long. So I'm really sorry about that. But inshallah, I hope that we all benefit from it, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, helps us to act on what we have learned and, have more soul in our actions. But yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys if anybody wants to say anything. Anyone?
Assalamu alaikum, Sister Fatkul.
Wa alaikum salam.
Like to share 2 points, which you already had said it before. These are the only days when all the 5 pillars of Islam come into action. The only days in the whole year never has all the 5 pillars of Islam. Second is, it's a blessing that during Ramadan, the last 10 days, we had to search and strive for Laylatul Qadr. Arafat is a blessing. It's a gift given. As you said, I love that statement. And I'm preparing a small reminder for the boys tomorrow, for the children, Trust me, I put that immediately as a note, and I've made one slide. The moment you said it, I loved it.
Yeah.
You said it's an end year sale, and I have put that in my presentation.
Yeah.
And I think Arafat is, I know the day, I know the time. What else? I just have to raise my hands. Jazakallahu Khairan, Sister Fatima, for everything.
Barakallahu feekum. Alhamdulillah. Really, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so kind, He has given us so many opportunities. So I hope, inshallah, we're able to, continue to be patient and continue to try and benefit from these opportunities. Anyone else? It's nice to, get some feedback, or even if you want to repeat anything that I said that has resonated with you, it might, benefit somebody. Yes, Syra?
I think what really strikes you and makes you so emotional about Hajj is, when you just say those labbaik, Allahumma labbaik, that I'm here, Allah, I'm here. That the fact that you said that, when you love someone and you want to see that person, you can't. And that Kaaba just is representing that. And then you say to Allah, oh, I'm here, Allah.
Yeah.
So that's really emotional. And that's how you just connect to Allah in these days.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And no amount of, reading paragraphs from a book, or, reading different sort of like instructions and all of that is going to put that soul into your action, until you actually understand and internalize that this is what is happening, it's almost like I'm going to visit Allah. I'm going to, going to Allah's house. And so, yeah, that's really, for me, that's what it is really, that statement. It's just like, I want to continue my contract with you, Allah. And, you're the only one that I love truly, and the only one that I worship alone. So, yeah. And yeah, seeing the Kaaba is definitely, it piques a lot of those emotions, and the peace that you feel when you see the Kaaba immediately. It's like someone's suddenly comforted, and it's like a warm hug that you've just got, and someone's just comforted you that you've arrived, and now everything will be taken care of. So yeah. Anyone else? Anything that you want to share, or anything that resonated with you, or something that really struck a chord?
I just want to say how beautiful and how kind Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and how Rahim, that's all the options for good deeds that we have in this time, like the reward that is so great. So we can actually do so many different things. So like whoever can read Quran better can focus on that. The one who is easier to fast can do that. Like we can do as much as we can, and inshallah the reward is so great for for all the ones we're trying, inshallah.
Absolutely. And just remember that Allah has kept it so simple as well, that if for any reason you said, oh, I'm sick, or I'm traveling, or I'm busy, or I'm this or that, even if you just kept saying the takbirat and the tahleel and the tahmeed, mashallah, that's the best thing that you could be doing during these days. Make istighfar. Your tongue is always with you. You can always use it wherever you are, whatever you're doing. So, subhanallah. Okay, mashallah. Thank you, Shawana, for sharing that. And anyone else would like to remind us something that they learned during the talk that really struck a chord with them, or that really affected them? Because sometimes, hearing it again from someone, it makes you think again about it, makes you reflect some more. Anything anyone else wants to add? Or even something from yourselves? Okay, I'll take Ibrahim's later. I don't want to keep everyone. If any of the other sisters have anything to say. Okay, Ibrahim, go ahead.
Is that when you go to Mecca, like, let's say like someone messaging you and stuff, but you should remember that, like, look, you're in Mecca, or like, for example, you're in Medina, and like you're doing Umrah, and someone messages you, you need to like go in your mind that, look, I'm going for Umrah, and if I do this is good, it's gonna ruin my Umrah, and like it might mess it up. So, and like, what if you like get into like a conversation, then it's best you just ignore it, and then when you leave Mecca and you're done with that, then you can maybe reply, because it's more important, because it's like saying, would you rather go to Jannah and ignore that message, or would you rather go to hellfire and do the whole thing and like miss out on all the ajr? So it's best you just ignore it, because it could start like a whole conversation.
Okay. So I don't know what exactly whereabouts he's talking about, but yeah, during the tawaf, yeah, you should definitely not be taking your phone out or looking at messages. And generally during the Hajj, unless it's important, yeah, we should not be, spending time on any kind of social media or any kind of conversations, because really, as I said, that, we've come there, it's like the final part of our journey, and now it's almost like you've come to meet Allah. So nothing should be distracting you from that, and no other, chit chats and, things like that. So it should really just be about between you and Allah. And it's again time to spend with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And, as Allah tells us in the Quran, that these are the days for dhikr of Allah. So any time that you have, other than when you're doing your faraid and other things, spend it in dhikr of Allah. Does any other sister want to add anything? I really like hearing from you guys. I like to hear your reflections. So I'd like to encourage you to, share anything that you would like to share with us. No? Okay. All right, inshallah. So we will end the meeting now. And I had initially thought that next week we could spend a little bit of time talking about the day of Arafah, because I think next week is just a day or so before Arafah. No, it's not a day, it's a few days before Arafah. But inshallah, if there is anything, I'll announce it on the group. Otherwise, we're closing for now. And we'll resume durus, inshallah, if I'm able to, in September. But as I said, there's something that I'm trying to complete for myself. And so if I can make the time to do both and juggle both, I will do it, inshallah. If I can't, then I'll make announcements on the group anyway. And inshallah, we keep in touch on the group. We share reminders. And, if there's anything useful, please, you guys also are welcome to write on the group. And I will as well, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. And Jazakallahu Khairan for making the time and coming and for staying all the way up to the end. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put barakah in your homes, in your wealth, in your rizq, in your time. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this gathering a source of forgiveness for us, and a reason for us to be mentioned in a better gathering. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين.